let's have a lesson on this work and follow the lesson for free. But if you're interested, you can pick up the free sheet music. There's a link in the description for that. And you just download the PDF, no sign up required or anything like that. And this is part of a collection of easy pieces I'm putting together as a supplement to my Volume 1 and Volume 2 method book. And I would place this one probably near the end of my Volume 2. So like, at the end of, when you finish my Volume 2 method book, you go on to my Repertoire Lessons Grade 1 book. And I would play this near the end of Volume 2 or, just before you're playing Grade 1 stuff. It's actually, there's nothing awkward about it at all, but it's quite active and it's much more like a Grade 1 piece, except without any kind of awkward fingerings or chords or anything like that. But definitely it's more of a handful for beginners, so I would wait till near the end of my Volume 2 method before you play this one. Feel free to experiment with a variety of different tempos that suit your needs. If you play it slower, you can just focus a lot more on the musicality. Almost like a slow lament. Get a little bit of a vibrato in there and stuff like that. If you go a little bit faster, it's going to be more rhapsodic and kind of tight and closed off and have a different type of energy. So whatever you're comfortable with, you can make it work by experimenting with the musicality to make the musicality and your tempo work together along with your technique. A couple of things about this piece in terms of your technique. One aspect of it will be the muting of the notes when there's eighth note rests, and we'll be talking about that, and also some phrasing ideas that we can discuss as well. But let's talk about that muting aspect first. So we start off, and I think when he has mutes on in both voices, we should actually mute the sound. So not the mutes while the other stuff is happening, but for example, at the end of measure 2, you can see that the end of 2 is just completely blocked off by rests. So I think we should cut the sound there. And that kind of gives the piece a little bit of a rhapsodic nature, a little bit of a cutoff energy, kind of a tight energy. So we're going to observe those. So we're just going to put our fingers back on the strings there. Now, we're really just going to be taking our right hand fingers and putting them back on the strings. You might hear some resonance happening from your 5th string, and you might notice that in the video, like maybe I block out some of that with other fingers. As a beginner student, don't worry about that. Just do a basic mute where you stop the sound on the main strings. Don't worry about complete silence or anything like that. That's beyond the scope of a beginner student. But we're just going to take those fingers and put them back on the strings. So if we played the top 3 strings there, we'll place our fingers back on the top 3 strings to stop the sound and then carry on with the piece. Same thing there is that if we're playing 4 strings there, the 5th string, 3rd, and the top 3 strings, we're going to put all 4 fingers back on those strings to stop the sound at the end of measure 6. Doesn't call for it there. Mute, 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 mute. Mute. So don't overthink it. Just put your fingers back on the strings when you have those rests, and I've listed the measures in the comments below the piece. Now, in terms of phrasing and dynamics, it's pretty open-ended here. There's nothing marked on the page or in the original. So this is generally what I've been doing with it. I've been starting off relatively soft. Crescendo louder. crescendo, louder. Relax. You don't have to make any of those dynamics too extreme if you don't want to, but you can experiment with doing like large contrasts or just more subtle contrasts. It's really up to you. Besides that, you know, when you're going through this piece, you just want to recognize some of the chord shapes. Like when you take each quarter note beat, you have like an A minor chord there, and a D minor chord, and then an A minor chord, an E chord, A minor, E. So, you know, thinking of it in block terms, but then also one note at a time, you know, getting the next note, but holding your fingers down. So it's great to practice block forms, taking all the notes within a chord and practicing them as a block, but in terms of legato, just getting the next note that you need to while holding your fingers down. So getting this note, then those, this note, then these, this note, then these, is much smoother than trying to lift all of the fingers off and get all of the fingers of a chord down, because as soon as you lift all your fingers off, the sound stops. So in order to play smoothly, you always have to get the next available note, make sure it's ringing while you get the following notes. One last thing I'll mention is the use of the third finger in measure 16. So in measure 15, we're going, and then 3. You could use your second finger, but the reason I use 3 is that the note that comes right before is 2 and 4. So letting go of the second finger there, it could create a small tiny gap in the legato, as opposed to just a quick movement down the string with the third finger, then the second finger there, and then you're back to normal. So that's one of those situations where an alternative fingering can help with the legato a little bit. You're welcome to use your second finger. If you smooth it over, it's not really noticeable, but you know, it's a good opportunity to slide that third finger down and to try out an alternative fingering for that note to facilitate legato. But like I said, if you feel like using 2, just smooth it out nicely, and it's totally acceptable as well. But again, don't overthink any of this stuff. It's a pretty straightforward piece, nothing particularly awkward. And you just want to focus on really solid playing. There's a nice, you know, clear bass line. And lots of chords to go through. Outside of that, I hope you enjoy the piece and you find it useful. If you've gone through my Volume 2 method book, I don't think you'll find it difficult at all, but the muting technique might be something new that you'll have to explore and experiment with.